So guys, welcome to another episode of the King of Weighted Calisthenics Coaching Cues podcast. Sorry for missing the upload last week. We were just simply too busy. So we couldn't find an appointment for recording. But now we're back, starting with Q&A. And I would say, ask me.
Let's go. So we're starting today's podcast with a very, very simple question that we actually received many, many times already, recently especially, and that is probably something you need to answer, and that is, when is the King of Weighted Showdown Season 2?
Showdown Season 2. So I think I already published a story about this. So the main problem that we are facing there is that running a season like this is very, very expensive for us, because it is very, very time consuming. So you need to calculate all the loans in it, the hours that we need to put in. You need to have a programmer that you need to pay that runs the whole back end of it. We need to organize prize monies. We need to organize everything around this, and so it's just a very pricey thing, and we haven't figured out yet how to monetize it in a way that it's worth for us to spend all that time doing it. And until we not have a reasonable concept for this, we won't run a second season. There will definitely be a second season, but there are no real plans for it. So it can be March, it can be August. We don't really know. We have some other projects going on at the moment that will be published first, and that also require a lot of workload. So yeah, there will be a season 2. But not in the near future, not in the next 3 months, definitely not. And yeah, if maybe you have super nice ideas how to monetize it that goes beyond let everybody pay 5 to 10 euros of fees, because that won't do it, then let me know. Just so you know, roughly season 1 was around 20,000 euros in cost. So that is what we roughly need to generate out of it. Of course, with a surplus, so it makes sense for us to do it. And if you have reasonable ideas, feel free to share it. And then, yeah, it might be a bit faster with season 2.
All right. Then
Should I get a question for you?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, Flow Motion _ street workout asked, any experience with intermediate fasting to gain weight? So usually people ask if we have experience with intermediate fasting to lose weight, but now it's the opposite, gaining weight.
Sure. First of all, I'm not a big advocate of intermediate fasting, simply because you limit the time frame where you can eat, and that is not as nice, especially for the muscle protein synthesis, since the muscle protein synthesis is constantly working, and if you don't give your body enough protein, it will take the protein off your muscles, it will break it down, and it will use it as energy. So this means you need to constantly give your body a little bit of protein. Ideally, you distribute it out over the course of the day, so roughly 4 to 5 meals would be appropriate, with a protein feeding of roughly 20 to 40 grams depending on the person. And that is already the biggest problem with intermediate fasting, because you probably eat 8 hours of a 24-hour day, and you only have those 4 to 5 possibilities during the day to give your body a little bit of protein, and therefore I would recommend to not do intermediate fasting. But if you want to do so, then just get in 3 to 4.
Is actually the original idea behind it? So if you the promoters of intermediate fasting, what is the argument? I never dived into this. Why is it so popular? I never understood that.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Me neither. So I never touched on that as well.
Like I understand the logic for people that want to lose weight, because if you just limit the window in which you can eat to like 6 or 8 hours, it's like hard to
it's not
get like 5,000 of calories in, and then it's easier to
but that's
lose
not
weight.
impossible. So I know
Yeah,
plenty
I
of
mean, but
people who do intermediate fasting, and then they eat 3 meals a day, and each meal contains 1,500 calories.
Then you will also overshoot. But like, I think that was the intention, just limiting the window of possible snacks.
Exactly. And yeah, for some people that might work.
Because the time of fasting is like way too short for any fasting advantages.
Exactly. So the best is eat your frequent meals.
Just eat like a grown-up.
And to gain weight, you need to have a calorie surplus. That is all what you need to do to gain weight. And you can do that within a time frame of 8 hours. And you can do that within a time frame of 16 hours per day. And how you distribute it out throughout the day might make some differences, especially for higher level athletes, simply because due to the muscle protein synthesis and a more evenly distributed calorie.
And for training performance, you should also definitely make sure to have like, even if you're doing intermediate fasting, to have like a meal 1 to 3 hours, depending on how fast you digest and what you eat before the workout, because otherwise I fear your performance will go down.
Exactly. Then let's continue with the next.
I'm hungry.
Yeah, it's lunchtime. All right. So next question: how long should a hypertrophy, strength, and peaking phase be?
So very big,
general question.
Big and general question. Let's try to make this as general as possible. So first of all, there is no general answer. It's not like I can tell you it's always 3 months of hypertrophy followed by 2 months of strength followed by a 4-week phase of peaking. Like that won't work, because you need to take a look at the individual needs of an athlete, and of course also at the time frame that you have. So you have a different approach when someone has a competition in 3 months versus someone that has a competition in 12 months. So that is the first thing you should take a look at. How much time do you have until your next competition? Next thing I would take into consideration is your own level. Are you already a very experienced lifter? Are you more a beginner? How much muscle mass do you already have? What is the weight class that you want to compete in? Because that kind of also defines if you really can have like a useful hypertrophy phase or not. So there are several factors that you need to take into consideration. And if you are an unexperienced lifter, I would spend most of the time of your prep really with moderate to high intensity, so not too high. Let's say like the frame like 60 to 80%, 1 rep max roughly. Why not absolute high, like 80+ percentages? Because with beginners, you just respond very good to those moderate intensities. That means you get the same results from moderate intensities that you would get with high intensities, while having lower risk of injury, lower fatigue, and that's just then the superior approach for you. You have probably not too good technical capabilities, which also then is something that influences the intensity that you can use in your training, because you're technically not safe. I would just not train too heavy. And then last 4 to 8 weeks before the competition, I would start, when you are a beginner, with really practicing the competition lifts, also then with singles and doubles, because that is a skill that requires practice. So only because you have a high estimated 1 rep max from working with 80% or 60% doesn't mean you can bring that performance on stage. So even though you're a beginner, like the last couple of weeks before the competition, I would definitely suggest you to peak, meaning progressively increase the intensity towards the performance that you want to have on the platform. Yeah, I talked a lot. Maybe for intermediate to advanced lifters, you can take over.
Sure. So it always highly depends on the goals of the athlete. So if we're taking elite athletes who really want to compete at a higher level or competed already, it might make sense to not go into specific phases at all, because it might be that the athlete is not prepared for certain phases. Because if, let's say, if you have someone who trains for a 1RM competition, and during his hypertrophy phase, he is training in the higher rep ranges, and that is not specific at all for his sport he is doing, because he's competing at a 1RM competition. So in that case, it might make sense to split the training not into phases like a hypertrophy, strength, and peaking phase, but keeping specificity high throughout the whole season, or divide the training more into off and in season. And as there are some lifters out there who might benefit from doing singles the whole year long, so they get better at doing these, because there are some people out there who have really trouble with getting better with those higher intensities, where others are out there who have a harder time to do more reps, and therefore this might be a good idea for some people to stay in the specific kind of training throughout the whole year, simply to keep the adaptations high. And as you might spend a little longer time in a hypertrophy phase, you don't know how much the effect might be for the strength phase or the outcome of the strength phase. And
I think what the absolute base of what you need to understand is that strength athletes always do strength training. So even in what you call hypertrophy phases, volume phases, off seasons, you still train very, very strength specific. So a powerlifter will never train like a bodybuilder, even though he is in a hypertrophy phase. He will still do heavy triples, heavy sets of 5, maybe heavy singles, as you say, or heavy doubles, whatever. So you always have with your competition lifts heavy work in. That's what your sport is. So a powerlifter or weighted calisthenics athlete will never be a bodybuilder for 6 months just because it's off season. So the term hypertrophy phase is more related to focusing on building up muscles, building up movement qualities, strengthening structures. It's not training like a bodybuilder for a certain period of time. And so you will have powerlifters that are in a hypertrophy phase, and the only thing they are doing different is they eat a bit more calories because they have more room for weight gain, because they do not need to compete on a certain level. And the amount of heavy work is maybe reduced a bit. And that's like the main difference that you have. So it's not like most people think that you have like 3 months of reps of 8 only. So I do weighted dips 8 reps, then I go over to a strength phase and I do 5 times 5, and then I go over to a peaking and I do 5 times 1. That's not how it works. Like, you never have rep ranges exclusively in one phase. You always do all of it, just the ratios of how much heavy work, how much moderate intensity work you are doing, that differs from phase to phase. And the volume also changes usually during the phases. That also depends on the lifter a bit, but usually the heavier you go, the more rest times you need, the more central nervous system fatigue you accumulate. That means automatically, for most athletes, you need to downregulate the volume a bit. But that also differs from athlete to athlete. And how you can run a peaking also highly depends on how much experience you already have, and also how strong you are. Because like peaking for like Thor, Hafthor, who needs to lift like, I don't know, 600 kg in a deadlift, takes more time to build up than a deadlift peaking for Michael, who can barely lift 250. So a lot of factors.
Definitely, yeah. But I think that answers the question
Actually,
pretty good.
we haven't really answered it, but it depends.
It depends, as always. All right, then let's continue with another question.
I think it's my turn.
Oh, yeah.
Then we have Momo Hofmeister, antagonistic supersets effective for muscle growth.
Yeah, I would say so. Antagonistic supersets is like doing a biceps curl followed by a triceps extension, for example. And if all the criterias are kept in mind when planning the training, like volume, intensity, frequency, and so on, it might be effective for muscle growth if you're in a calorie surplus.
Maybe adding why it has the, how do you say Ruf haben in English? Why it's been thought to be very effective for muscle growth is because you just can do more training in less total time. And as volume seems to have a dose-response relationship with muscle growth, more training in many cases is related to more hypertrophy, and that's why those antagonistic supersets are referred to being good for hypertrophy. But if you are in a caloric deficit, you're not training it to failure, and your technique is shit, and the training doesn't arrive in the muscles that you want to train, then also antagonistic supersets won't grow your muscles. So in the end, it all comes down to eating enough and training intense enough.
Right. Awesome. Then, next up, Jonas Mees. Ever talked of using velocity failure in training, or is it overkill?
Like we talked about this before, and I have literally zero experience with velocity-based training. I haven't had the time yet to dig into it. As far as I know, there are also no references for weighted calisthenics yet. So you would need to do all the like transfer work from powerlifting, looking at these numbers, trying to transfer it to weighted. So for now, I'm have like really just the bare minimum of knowledge about it.
Yeah. But you can adapt your intensity to be kind of a velocity stop. So let's say if you have someone who really needs to practice a certain lift, you give them an RPE of, let's say, 7, and he's doing sets until he exceeds that RPE, for example, and that would be kind of similar to a velocity-based stop you can use to have more volume for that lifter to get more practice in and to keep quality high, of course. But there are also several other things on how you can go about such a thing. Doesn't necessarily have to do with velocity by itself, but you can give a lifter, for example, a fixed weight and a fixed rep range, or another rep range, a fixed amount of reps. Let's say we give him squats with 150 kg for 24 reps, and he's performing reps until he's feeling a breakdown in his performance or in the speed of the repetitions. And this is actually an approach that I like to integrate post-competition, because work capacity is low and that is a good time to implement or let the lifter work up to higher volumes while also improving his cardiovascular system, if rest times are kept in mind, of course. All right, then maybe there is something as well.
Brigitte. Lois, that's a question directly addressing you. Why you never show your training like Micha? In before, he's recording as much as I do, so you will find on his phone every fucking set that he ever did. So the question is, why are you such a lazy fucker and are not uploading it to your Instagram story?
So basically, I don't like social media that much, and I already spent 10 to 12 hours per day in front of the computer working, studying, and yeah, I don't want to spend even more time to upload that stuff on Instagram, simply because it is more time expensive, and time is money, as you know. And yeah,
but
and Michael is already sharing his
more
workouts.
content generate more clients and so more money, my friend?
That's true, yeah.
So maybe in the future you will see more content also.
Probably.
Yeah.
So.
And there was also a second question.
Yeah, there was a second
addressing
question.
also you personally.
Yeah, and that was
from Tonio.
When do you reach the 500 kg total? Well,
maybe we should ask Tonio when the fuck he shuts up.
Or when does he reach the 600 kg total? Yeah, for me personally, there is something planned for the next year. We will see if it happens or not. But first of all, I probably need to hit 400 kg first before I go for the 500 kg.
Do you know what your E1RM total is at the moment?
At the moment, it's at roughly... So with the... Not at the moment, but with the stats that I calculated for myself that I want to achieve, I'm somewhere in between 380 up to 400, which would be very, very nice. But I'm not sure if it's doable. But we're within a time frame of 6 months. Okay.
Yeah, but I think if no injuries are coming along,
then things are looking pretty good at the moment. And I'm really, really hyped to get into, because training is going pretty well at the moment, and the hype is real for both of us. So
we're having sessions now where we didn't used to train together all the time, but now I think 3 months roughly.
Yeah, since beginning of September.
Yeah, after the World Championships.
Already earlier, I guess. If I'm not mistaken, we started already.
I'm not sure. And now it's heavy weighted sessions in the chamber, in the headquarter.
Yeah, man.
Do we have a last question?
A last question, yeah.
Let me just check the time.
So there is
recording.
Actually one more to give the guys a little bit more input. And that one comes from Coach Dimitrov. Is there a correlation between handstand push-up and planche? Example, 5 handstand push-ups equals 3 to 4 seconds straddle planche. So
first of all, you misinterpreted that. Can you say that in English? You misinterpret and you put things in context the wrong way, because if you say there is a correlation, yes, but a correlation does not mean equals. So correlation means better in handstand push-up for a very, very high chance also equals better in planche. But no direct transfer, like 5 reps is 1 second, 10 reps is 2 seconds, because it's just a correlation. So they correlate and it's not equal. And that is also how I would put it. So definitely they correlate because they train similar patterns. It's both a shoulder flexion dominant movement. So handstand push-up will have a carryover, but just in a way that it correlates. So there's no direct transfer. So just from handstand push-ups, you probably won't get much better in planches.
Yeah, I think that answers it well. And then we finish today's episode of the King of Weighted Coaching Cues, a calisthenics coaching cues podcast. And
we will practice this.
we'll practice this once again, yeah, as usual. And yeah, don't forget.
As always, you want to do the coaching pitch this time?
Go for it.
If you want to level up your weighted calisthenics training, combine it with skill work, avoid injuries. If you already have like annoying nagging injuries, get rid of them. We are willing to offer our help. So if you're interested in working with us as your personal online coaches, then just schedule your free consulting call via the link in the description. And then I would say see you in the consulting call and in the next episode.